Welcome to On the Right Side of History with Kansans for Life. Come with us as we connect the pro-life movement's past to present, uncover hidden or forgotten history, and its connections to the battle still raging today. Now, here's our host, Danielle Underwood.
Hi, everyone. Today, we're going to hear from a mom with a mission. Ashley Opliger and her husband, Matt, suffered a tragedy when they lost their preborn daughter, Bridget, at 24 weeks of pregnancy. They experienced the shock and sadness that comes with losing a child, but decided to celebrate and honor her life in an unexpected way that would ultimately reach thousands of others. Ashley is with us today to tell the story. Hi, Ashley.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, so grateful to you for coming on and doing this with us. We're very excited to delve into this topic that we don't typically do, but it's so aligned with, respecting the life, the dignity of every human person. And it's such an important thing for us to all become more aware of. So I just wanted to kind of launch our conversation by having you tell us about Bridget. Can we start there?
I would love to. So my daughter, Bridget Faith Opliger, she was stillborn at 24 weeks in 2014, October of 2014, so almost 10 years. And she is my husband and I's first child, our only daughter. We've since had two little boys, now 7 and 3. But we were expecting shortly after we got married, and we were so excited to grow our family and just become parents and all of the things that come along with that. And we were starting to work on a nursery, pick out nursery colors, all of those things. And around 13 weeks, I started having very heavy bleeding. I was at work as a speech pathologist. That's what I did before I left for this ministry. But I was at work and I was rushed to the ER. And at that point, they told me I had about a 50% chance that I would miscarry because I had what's called a subchorionic hemorrhage, which meant that the area around my uterus and my womb was bleeding. And so they put me on bed rest, and I was on bed rest for the next 11 weeks. And I basically just stayed in bed and went to a couple of doctor's appointments, but mostly just did everything that I could to keep my daughter safe and stay pregnant as long as I could, because the further along that I could be, then there were chances that, she would be able to survive after birth. However, at 24 weeks, I went into labor and she was stillborn. She was actually very growth restricted because of the hemorrhaging and everything like that. And so she was only 13 ounces. She was not even a pound, but so fearfully and wonderfully made. She was perfect. She had little fingernails. She had eyebrows and little peach fuzz over her lips. She was starting to grow hair. She had long fingers like me, cute little button nose. She was just perfect, but very, very tiny. And so the hospital staff, she was born here in Wichita at Wesley Medical Center, and they put her in one of those traditional hospital blankets that you're familiar with seeing newborns in. And it really just swallowed her up. She was so tiny that it was hard to see her, to feel her weight, to love on her. And then my mom, out of her hospital bag, she pulled out this beautiful mint green cradle. And the story behind why she had that cradle is about a week before Bridget was born, I was hospitalized due to complications and more bleeding. And at that point is when the NICU doctors told us, we're not sure that you're going to be able to stay pregnant much longer. And if you do deliver soon, she's so tiny and growth restricted that we may not be able to save her with the things that we have here at the hospital. And so they were kind of preparing us for the worst case scenario. But we were obviously praying for a miracle and praying that the Lord would sustain my body and the pregnancy. But unfortunately, she was born a week later. Well, during that week in between, my mom started knitting this tiny little mint green blanket because she wanted to have something to swaddle her granddaughter in. And after she made this little blanket, she thought, how would I swaddle such a tiny baby in this blanket? And that's when she says that God gave her the idea to knit the sides up and turn it into a little cradle. I actually have a replica of Bridget's original cradle here. And so she knit the sides up and she put a little cross at the foot and some white lace around the edges. And as you can see here, there's a little blanket that was able to place over her body. And we put her in this cradle and it changed everything for us. Obviously, this was this moment of trauma and shock and heartbreak, but at the same moment, it was this moment of peace where we got to see and hold our baby that we love so much. And we got to spend 24 hours with her in the cradle. And both my husband and I, we spent the whole time in that hospital bed just holding her to our chest and picking her up and kissing her nose and her lips. And both of our families were able to come to the hospital and we got to pass her around and everybody got to hold her. And we took photographs of her in her cradle and us holding her. And those are truly the most treasured possessions that we own now.
Wow.
So the cradle was just in the middle of the heartbreak. It was something that provided a peace to us, along with our faith in Jesus, knowing that Bridget was in heaven and that we were going to see her again.
Oh, that's such a beautiful story. So it really was that moment of inspiration for your mom to think of something. I've never heard of anything similar to this. I don't know if it potentially exists or not, but I love that, she just had this inspiration and then all of a sudden you had this circle of support around you and you were able to honor Bridget and love her and just do it with so much dignity. So I think it's an incredible story. And I just wonder, so kind of two questions here. So first thing would be, you obviously had a moment where, you all were working through your own grief and you were finding ways to honor her and celebrate her, and you had that circle of support. But at some point, your attention turned to, you realized that there was a need or maybe a want on your part to help others who were in similar situations. And I'm just wondering, could you tell us what that moment was that led you to think about expanding what you were able to see as such a healing moment for you and offering similar healing moments for other families?
Yes. So it was a twofold part of the process. Some of it was God speaking to my mom and God speaking to me. So my mom actually was a postpartum nurse and still is at that same hospital. And she, after Bridget was born, was hearing all this feedback from the nurses saying, we've never seen anything like this cradle. And this was such a good way to hold a baby in the second trimester who's so tiny and fragile. They thought this was very functional and dignifying because besides those big bulky blankets, the other options that they had was to put a baby in a washcloth, to put a baby in a medical bin. And those are not ways to hold a sacred little life.
No.
And so I think that they all saw this cradle and they were thinking, wow, this is going to be something that we could use for other families because this is very functional, dignifying, and also allows the family to hold and bond with their baby, get these photographs that they will treasure forever. And then the third part of the cradles that I didn't mention was that they're also used for burial or keepsake. And so for us, we chose to bury Bridget in her cradle inside the casket. And that was comforting to us to know that she was bundled in this little cradle that my mom had lovingly made for her. And some families that receive our cradles, they'll do that, or they'll keep the cradle as a keepsake because it was the only thing that got to touch their baby's body and the only thing that was physically present with their baby. And so they'll hold on to it. Some moms have told me they'll sleep with their cradle or they'll put it in a little shadow box and have it as a memory. But for all of those reasons, the hospital said, this is something that we want for other families. And they asked my mom to start making more. So my mom started making more. And as she started making more for the hospital, God was working on my heart about what it was that he wanted for me. And the story for me is I went back to Bridget's empty nursery and I was in a lot of grief, a lot of pain, a lot of questioning God of why, God, would you allow this to happen to me? And just doubting, I was a follower of Jesus before Bridget died, but I think that in this moment, it was this crisis of faith, a juncture for me to realize, am I going to really believe what I say I believe? And do I really believe Jesus is who he said he is? And the answer for me that I came to was, yes, I do believe that he is, and that through faith in him, I will see my daughter again. And so I had this moment. I was in the fetal position on the floor in her empty nursery. And I cried out to God and I said, God, if you are who you say you are, and that you are offering me this glorious hope of eternity in heaven with her, then I'm going to hang on every single word in the Bible, because the faith and the hope that I have to see Bridget again is coming from the truth of the Bible. And so I'm going to cling to all of it. And so I say that was the birth of the ministry, really, was in that empty room with God, just saying, okay, God, I'll do anything that you ask me to do. At the time, I didn't know what all that would entail. But God has lovingly just guided myself and our board and our team throughout this journey. And our mission is to comfort families who have lost a baby with the hope of the gospel. And we do that in so many different ways through the Cradles. We have a podcast, support groups, remembrance events, lots of different ways that we love on these families and share the hope that they'll get to see their babies again.
That's so beautiful. Could you talk to us a little bit about, I know that not too long ago you had an event on Mother's Day, and that you'll also be doing a similar event on Father's Day, where you really kind of give an opportunity to do some bereavement, but together. Can you tell us some about what those events look like, and also what you hear from the families who attend?
Yes. So actually behind me, so we're in our headquarters in Keachai, Kansas. It's a little town north of Wichita. And we host monthly support groups here. And then on key milestones, holidays throughout the year, we hold special events. So the balloons that you see behind me, those were from Bereaved Mother's Day. So that's the Sunday before Mother's Day. And what we do is we invite women in our community who have experienced miscarriage, stillbirth, or infant loss to come and just have a space to grieve, to talk about their babies, to say their names. And we make little bracelets with their babies' names or initials on them, or a birthstone charm. We make those together. And then we do a rose ceremony where I share their baby's name and they come up and receive a rose. We have the balloons where they can take pictures. And then we had a meal together and just community. It's just a time of fellowship. The thing that we always say is that grieving alone is so much harder than grieving in community. And we need each other. We need the body of Christ to grieve and weep with those who are weeping, and to be just someone that's willing to sit in the sadness with them and acknowledge the pain, but also point them to the hope that we have. And so that's what we do. We had the Mother's Day just very recently, that event. And then we have a Bereaved Father's Day couples cookout coming up here in June. And then we have a very large event every year on October 15th, Pregnancy and Infant Loss Remembrance Day, and that's called Wave of Light. And that is this big community event where we gather bereaved families and their friends and family to come and basically have a candlelight community vigil that we do. And so we gather, we have 50,000 pink, blue, and white lights that we set up. It's beautiful. You'll have to look at the pictures and the videos that we have. But we walk through the lights. We call it our Hope Walk. And we then release these water lanterns onto the lake, and families can write a little message to their baby in heaven and put it out onto the lake. And it's just a beautiful night of remembrance and healing, and just holding space for the grief.
Wow. You all have thought so much through. I'm sure that you have an excellent team in place that is helping you with all of this. This takes a lot of people to do this amount of planning and orchestration. And I'm wondering, I bet you hear some really powerful stories of bonding and connection between the moms, between the dads, between the families. And just what do you hear from them about that sense of community?
Yeah. So one particular mom comes to mind, and I feel comfortable sharing her story because she publicly shares what I'm about to share. She's shared it on our podcast and she's shared it at our events. But she tells us that if it weren't for Bridget's Cradles and the healing that she's been able to have coming to these events and to these support groups and having this community around her, she says that she was not sure that her marriage would have made it. In this kind of grief, a lot of times men and women grieve very differently, and it can be a source of tension. There's a lot of divorces that happen after loss because of the stress and the difficult nature of grieving something so great. I mean, the loss of a child is the greatest loss that we can ever experience. It's incredibly traumatic and it's incredibly heartbreaking. And so she shares that her having an outlet to come and be with other women who understood the pain that she was experiencing, and not only her having this outlet, but for her to have these couples events that they can come and they can talk about it. And what's beautiful is when we have the couples come together, it's neat for the men to hear from other men, oh, I'm grieving the same way too. And for even the men to hear from the other wives, oh, this is why my wife is going through this. And just to have that understanding and have that community where you don't feel like you're grieving alone. You know that there are other people walking this path and that are going to stand there and be shoulder to shoulder with you, and to remember the milestones and the dates that are so hard, and be someone that will support you in the journey is so helpful. And that mom that I shared about, she now volunteers with us every single day. She always says
Wow.
that the time that she's here serving in memory of her son is the time that she would have been spending with him. And she knows that the time that she's here, she's a little bit of her little boy in memory of her boy is going out with all of these cradles and all the things that she does in his memory. And that healing that takes place and knowing that she's using her grief for good and she's serving other people is just another avenue for her to grieve and to heal with God.
Amazing. So how many people roughly are involved in your organization, either as volunteers, official volunteers, and then also, just families who are involved?
Yeah. So we last year had about 250 different knitting and crocheting volunteers that live all across the United States that make the cradles. And so how our process works is anyone in the country can be a volunteer with us, and they can just sign up on our website, and we send them the patterns and the specifications, the dimensions, all of that information. And then they make them from home and then ship them to us here. And then I'll show you another cradle here. Our team here in Wichita, we have many sewers that come every single month, and they sew the lace and the crosses on and the bows and the little charms and things like that. And so we have probably around 30 different volunteers that come to our monthly work nights. We have one every single month, and those people sew. We have another team of people that take the cradles home and sew them from the comfort of their own home here in Wichita. And then we have an administrative team of about 5 people that are serving day in and day out. We're a pretty small team. We don't have any paid staff at this point in time. All of our donations go to our program costs. And so we are a pretty lean leadership team, but we have an amazing board of directors. We have an amazing advisory council that leads and guides us. And we've been blessed that the Lord has done a lot with a little, with the resources that we have. And we're very grateful for all of the volunteers that allow this to happen. In terms of our events, we had about 300 families come to Wave of Light last year.
That's fantastic.
And so
Yeah.
that was amazing.
How far
And
away do you
then,
think the furthest who traveled? Are they mostly local, or did they travel from other
they're mostly
places?
local, but actually we had a family fly from Arizona, and they
Wow.
actually shared their story from the stage that last year. And then the year before that, we had a family fly from Michigan. And so we're having some people fly in. We have a couple people drive from your area up in Kansas City or down in Oklahoma to us, but mostly it's local people. But we're hoping to spread the word so that more people would be wanting to travel and get to experience that night of healing.
Yeah, what a fantastic form of support for families who really need that connection. And I can only imagine, not having been through this tragedy that you and others have gone through. But, it really does seem like that is not replaceable by any other kind of community. Having people who can completely identify with what you've been through has got to be just an amazing support for these families. And you're doing such a fantastic, service doesn't even really seem like that's the right word here, but really, truly, you're creating that kind of community for them. So then with all these volunteers who are very busy, they're sewing, they're crocheting all of these beautiful cradles that are going to be lovingly nestling future babies who need that kind of, dignity, the families who want to dignify their baby that way. So then I understand that you all then package these up and you are shipping out boxes to hospitals around the country. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, so tell us about that piece.
Yes, so we are currently supporting over 1,400 hospitals in all 50 states. We send out around 30,000 cradles and memory keepsakes a year. So last year, we do an annual report every year, and by the end of 2023, we had almost sent, I think it was 249,000, almost 250,000 cradles and memory keepsakes from 2015 till this point. And so every single year we're growing and reaching more families and hospitals. These cradles are completely free of charge to the hospitals and the families. We pay for shipping. We cover the shipping costs with donations. And so there's no financial burden to the hospitals. And so whenever a hospital requests an order of cradles, they make that request. It's free for them and they receive them within a week. And so that is something that's very important to us, is to get them to them quickly and to continue to supply their needs over time. So as the hospitals are using the cradles, which of course our prayer is that the cradles are not needed and that they don't have a use for them, but we want them to be there when they are needed, so that at the moment of delivery, the nurses have something to present to the families so that they can hold their baby in that way. And so we have them there at the hospitals, and anytime they're running low, we have a hospital hotline. They can text us, they can call us, they can submit something on our website, and we will immediately get them more of the cradles that they need. And so that's our heart, is to partner with the hospitals so that they're there at the exact moment that the families would need them.
That's wonderful. So I'm wondering, what you've already had this exponential growth. How long the organization has been around? Less than a decade, correct?
Yeah,
Okay.
9 years.
9 years. And I can't imagine how busy you are, because, you're a mom of two and president and CEO of your organization. And you obviously, very much the visionary who's, really kind of guiding this into becoming what it is, which is a flourishing organization. I'm wondering what your goals are, going forward. Certainly, as every organization that's growing, you want something more, something, to grow in a different area. Do you all have any kind of goals like that you're striving for right now?
Yes, absolutely. So we are always under the guidance of the Holy Spirit and where He's leading us. And honestly, from the very beginning of the organization, I've asked Him, what is this all about? What do you want from us? And clearly, He has told me this is about sharing His hope with families. And so that's why we do that in so many different ways, through the cradles, through the podcast, through the support groups. But regarding the cradles, we would like to be in every single hospital. We would like it so that no family would have to deliver their baby and have them placed in a medical basin. We want them to be in a dignified little cradle so that their family has that opportunity to hold them and bond with them in the moments that they have at the hospital, and have a dignified burial option. And so certainly getting into every hospital in the country, that's one of our long-term goals, is to have them available, no matter where a family delivers at in the country. Long term, expanding even beyond America, but there's still a great need in this country to get to all of these hospitals. Personally speaking, right now I'm writing a book. It's called Cradled in Hope. It's in the same message that we share in our podcast every single month, but that book is going to be publishing next year. And I'm really excited about that, because then this message that we share every single month with our support groups, we have an online support group called Hope Online and an in-person support group. And I'm excited about all of the messages that we share with our local moms and our moms online, that message can be shared throughout the country in the form of a book, and that they can find that no matter what. And then that book can also connect them back to us and to our support groups. So we're very excited about that. And then regarding personally, so you can see the building that I'm in behind, we're in 1,000 square feet of space right now. We rent a little suite here, and it's been a beautiful blessing. We've used every square inch for God's glory and for his purposes, but we are outgrowing this space. And so a long-term dream would be for land possibly to be donated to us and to build our own headquarters so we can expand and grow and reach even more families, not just in our community, but in our state and in our country. So those are some big God-sized dreams,
Yeah.
but I'll tell you,
I was going to say the same.
I'm like, he can do it.
Yeah.
He can do it. I'll live to see the day. I believe it because I believe in what he can do and in his power and how he brings people together. I mean, all of this that you see, all the impact statistics that I just shared with you, that's not because of me. It's because of the people that he's gathered that are part of this beautiful organization. And so I'm excited to see what he's going to do in this next chapter of our organization.
I'm excited too. I love hearing all of these ideas and, what you're already doing and what you're planning to do. They are big dreams, and yeah, we applaud you. So I'm just thinking, kind of as a closing question here, I remember a situation where I was in a Bible study, and one of the moms in there, she already had several children, and she was pregnant and lost her baby at 38 weeks, and he was stillborn. And I remember that feeling of helplessness of, being in a community with her. And I felt so ill-equipped to know how to comfort, how to really show compassion when, she was going through something that was so different than what most of us had experienced. And I think, we felt that just unpreparedness. How do we, as pro-life people, we want to make sure that we show compassion and love to families we know, mothers and fathers, when they encounter this kind of experience, because probably most, if not all of us, will know someone who either suffers a miscarriage or repeated miscarriages or stillbirth. What do you recommend for us? What can we learn from you and from your experience and from all of the families that you serve? What should we do?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I love that you said, as pro-life, because something that I'm passionate about sharing with our ministry is, yes, we deal with death, but there is an opportunity to value life in death. And in valuing life in death, we show the value of life itself. And so we always say, James 1, verse 18, that our babies are holding God's most prized possession. And that's what that verse says, is that humans are his most prized possession. They're his first fruits. And so we take that so seriously that's why we have the standards that we do for our little cradles, that we know that God knows the precious little baby that's going to be inside of this cradle. And so, first of all, I just want to say that because there is value in even in death and even in miscarriage and stillbirth, of being able to value life. And as far as being a friend or family member and coming alongside someone that is grieving the loss of a baby, I think so often in our culture, we're so uncomfortable with death, and especially the death of a baby. And certainly our culture with pro-choice and pro-abortion, all of that, it makes it harder to grieve a baby, because essentially what our culture is saying is that this isn't even a baby that you're grieving, and when we're saying that this is a fetus and it's just a clump of cells, and then a mom is grieving a miscarriage, it's invalidating her loss. And she actually lost a child. She didn't lose a clump of cells. I mean, I know you know this, and we believe this, but I think that it's even harder to grieve a baby in this culture because we're not even valuing life in the womb. And so I think, as a pro-life friend and as a believer, coming alongside and acknowledging the loss, that this was and is and will continue to be your child, and that naming the child, if they chose a name for the baby, saying their baby's name when it's their baby's due date, when it's their baby's heaven day, having a little gift prepared. This is something that we do for all of our moms that come to our support groups, but on her due date, we make a little print. It's Jesus holding a baby, and we put their baby's name and their baby's heaven day on it. When it's their baby's heaven day, we have a necklace with their baby's birthstone charm. For Mother's Day, we had the birth flower print with their baby's name. And so any way you can acknowledge that this is their child, this is their baby, put their name on it, personalize it, ask them how they're doing, ask them about their baby. So often we think that, oh, I don't want to mention their loss because I think it's going to make them sad. I don't want to make them think about it. They're already thinking about their baby every single day, and they feel isolated and lonely when no one is bringing them up and no one is talking about it. And so I would say just sitting in the sadness with them, sitting in there and being willing to talk about the grief, being willing to say their baby's name, is hugely impactful for a mom to know that someone cares. And then practically speaking, just showing up for them in little ways even. So often, we text people and say, let me know if there's anything I can do for you, or I'm always here for you. Let me know if you need anything. Well, someone who's in the thick of grief and they're feel like they're in survival mode and they're drowning in this sorrow, they're not going to text you and say, actually, it'd be great if you could pick up some groceries for me, or actually, it'd be great if you could run this errand or come over and sit with me on my couch and let me cry with you. Sometimes it takes the initiative of someone else saying, what would be a good day for me to bring you a meal? Can I bring it on Tuesday or can I bring it on Wednesday? Most likely they'll take you up on that. And so sometimes being very practical and just offering those kinds of acts of service and love is so meaningful to a grieving mom and family.
That was incredibly beautiful, and I feel like I've learned so much from this conversation. It really, you did a fantastic job of giving us very practical ways that we can improve how we're really offering our hearts and coming alongside these families, these moms, these dads. And I'm really grateful to you for coming on and sharing all this information with us. So, people can follow you in different ways. And I wonder if you want to share some of the ways that they can.
Yeah. So our website is bridgetscradles.com, and that's where you'll find everything about our support groups, our remembrance event, Wave of Light that is coming up on October 15th. That's also where, if you're interested in volunteering with us, whether it's knitting and crocheting or volunteering locally, if you're here in the Wichita area, all of that information is on our website. Also, we have a Facebook and an Instagram page. They're both just at Bridget's Cradles. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram. We post everything that's going on, all of our upcoming events, volunteer opportunities, all of that's there. We also have a podcast called Cradled in Hope. You can find that on Apple iTunes, Spotify, anywhere that you podcast. We release episodes every single month on the first of the month. And we have about 50 almost. June will be 50 episodes available to listen to. And those are incredibly healing. All of them are Christ-centered and are pointing families to the hope of Christ, but it's different stories. And so, you'll get to hear from different ministry leaders and authors and grieving moms, dads, even couples. So there's a lot of resources in the podcast as well. And that also has its own Facebook and Instagram page. It's just Cradled in Hope.
You're doing an amazing job, and it's fun talking with a fellow podcaster who can really identify with how all this stuff comes together. And thank you so much. Like I said, I'm blown away by everything you all are doing for families. I think it's incredible. So thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you so much. Thank you for everything that you do.
Absolutely. So do check out Ashley's podcast and their website, their social media. Definitely recommend that. We will be staying in touch and seeing if there are different ways we can partner and, really elevating the dignity of every human person, including those who sadly leave this world far too early. But we thank you for that. So, and thank you to all of you who are listening today. Help us spread the word about this fabulous ministry and this podcast, all of these conversations we're having. You can help us do that by sharing this podcast. We do face censorship as a pro-life organization. We're down-throttled, and whatever that algorithm is that keeps us somehow suppressed, we really lean on you to help spread this. And you can do that directly just by sharing it and telling others about it, making sure you've subscribed. If you haven't yet, please stay in touch with us by going to kfl.org and signing up to receive our updates. You're going to get alerts about our events that we hold, different podcasts that we're doing, all kinds of information that you'll want to stay on top of if this is something that's near and dear to your heart, because we're going to be covering all kinds of podcast topics that are related to life, all different aspects, and you'll want to stay in touch with us, be part of this movement. So you can also stay connected with Kansans for Life by following us on social media. You can follow us on Facebook, X, Instagram, TikTok, at Kansans for Life. So as we say goodbye, as we end this every time, never forget the pro-life movement is on the right side of history. Truth always wins in the end. And we hope you'll join us next time. Thank you.